Welcome to this lecture on use of mathematical and statistical tools in the fight against COVID-19. My name is Xiaohua Zhou. I'm a professor in Beijing International Center for Mathematical Research and Department of Biostatistics at the Beijing University. Before I begin my lecture, I would like to thank Beijing University for giving me this opportunity to deliver this lecture, and also like to thank all frontline healthcare workers who has kept us safe from coronavirus. So here is outline my lecture. First, I like to introduce some history about deadly infectious diseases in history and some mathematical and statistical tool in fighting against infectious diseases. Then I will going to introduce some current research results on COVID-19 use mathematical and statistical tool. I will also give some of the results from my own research team. So here is the latest data from the world on epidemics of the COVID-19 as April 25th, 2020. So from this table, we can see the total number of confirmed infected cases around the world is about 2.8 million. The number of deaths is about 195,000. And in the United States, the number of confirmed infected cases is about 927,000. The number of deaths is about 52,000. Actually, the China here, the number of infected cases is still about 82,000, and number of deaths is 2,600. So here is actually, let's look at the trend of number of cases over time. So this graph shows the number of confirmed cases and number of deaths globally. So we can see from this graph that the number of confirmed cases has been increased exponentially since March 11. On the other hand, the number of confirmed cases of deaths in China over time actually has been flat or stable since February 26. So we can see that the human and infectious disease has been coexisting for a long time. In fact, the struggle between mankind and infectious diseases has going on since ancient time. Some might be familiar with some of those deadly infectious diseases such as Black Death, AIDS epidemic, influenza A, SARS, and so on. So here I'm going to discuss some of the deadly infectious diseases in history. So one of the deadly infectious diseases is the third pandemic of the plague, which started in late 19th century. It affected more than 60 countries in Asia, Europe, America, Africa, and killed more than 10 million people. So a lot of deadly infectious disease is Black Death that broke out in Europe in 1348. It killed tens of millions of lives and reduced the population of Europe by more than 1/3. And Spanish flu is the most destructive pandemics of all kind, killing up to 100 million people. The smallpox is one of the oldest and most deadly infectious diseases during the 20th centuries. It is believed it is responsible for more than 300 million deaths. Cholera is an acute diarrheal disease that can kill within hours if left untreated, and is one of the most infectious diseases and easily passed through contaminated food and water with bacterial cholera. Since year 2000 through year 2016, the countries reporting to the WHO has recorded a total of 3.4 million cholera cases and 65,600 deaths. The other one is Ebola, which is a very deadly infectious disease and can transmit to people from wild animals, can spread in human populations through human-to-human transmission. Also highly contagious, with evidence it can spread with air. It has affected about 2,700 with death rate of more than 50%. Human immune deficiency virus, HIV, can affect the cell of immune systems, destroying or impairing their functions. According to the estimate by WHO, about 36.7 million people has been infected with HIV globally at the end of 2016. That same year, some 1.8 million people became newly infected and 1 million died of HIV-related causes. So Bill Gates warned us 5 years ago, like something like coronavirus was coming. So in a TED talk in 2015, Bill Gates said, if anything kill over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be highly infectious virus rather than the war, not microbes. As some of you might know, the mathematical and statistical model has been studied to analyze and control spread of infectious disease for a long time. It can provide vital information such as reproduction number, threshold value of infections, contact rate. It can also provide quantitative insight in the spread of infection. It can also help to understand transmission characteristic of specific infectious disease, can help to evaluate the effectiveness of the control measure. So next, I like to discuss some successful stories about using mathematical and statistical tool in fighting against infectious disease. So first success story I will talk about is the use of mathematical tool against smallpox by the famous Swiss mathematician Daniel Brühl, who was the most distinguished member of second generation of the Brühl family of Swiss mathematicians. The Brühl family might sound like a mafia family from television show, but they were most predominant mathematical family of Europe in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. Daniel Brühl proposed a model for progression of smallpox in 1760, and then used his methods. Daniel evaluated the effectiveness of controversial vaccination of healthy people against smallpox virus. To prove the benefit of universal vaccination against smallpox, Daniel Brühl calculated the gain in life expectancy that would be achieved if more smallpox was eradicated. By comparing hypothetical population in which smallpox was eradicated to real-world data, he determined that in the population without smallpox, life expectancy would be increased about 3 years. My second successful story is about use of mathematical tool against cholera by Jung, a British doctor, and also a pioneer of public health medicine. He mapped cholera in London, England, and discovered that the virus comes from contaminated water pumps in 1854, as shown in these pictures. So to prove his hypothesis that the virus comes from contaminated water pumps that has causes cholera, John Slow used the idea of instrumental variables to draw his causal conclusion. So he first identified an instrument which was defined as strongly correlated with water purity, yet uncorrelated with other determinants of cholera incident. So instrument he identified was identity of the company supplying household in London with drinking water. And John Slow noticed London residents received drinking water directly from Thames River. So here is a picture of London water supply. So London residents at that time received water from one of the two water companies, Lambeth Water Company and Southwick and Vauxhall Company, let's call them S&V. So from this picture show, Slow noticed that Lambeth Water Company drew his water up river from where sewage was discharged into the river Thames and concluded his water was relatively clean. However, S&V Company drew his water below sewage discharge, and his water was contaminated. So here is a table about the John Slow's natural experiments data. So he collected number of deaths in London, England, and then he found out that the death rate from cholera in S&V houses was almost 10 times than the rate in the houses supplied by Lambeth Water Companies. So therefore, Slow has shown that contaminated water causes cholera. The third successful story is about W.H. Hammer. In 1906, W.H. Hammer proposed that the spread of infectious diseases should depend on number of susceptible individuals and the number of infective individuals. So his model has been used to model recurrent measles epidemics. So this was the first time the model has been used to model the incident rate, which is number of new cases per time, as the product of density of susceptible and effective. So now I'm going to talk about the fourth success story. It's about Reno R. Ross. So Ross actually received Nobel Prize for physiology or medicine in 1902 for his work on malaria. He demonstrated that malaria is transmitted from infected birds to healthy ones by bite of mosquitoes. So after he received Nobel Prize, he also developed a differential equation model for malaria as a host vector disease in 1911. The fifth successful story is about McKendrick and Kermack. In 1927, they developed a so-called susceptible infection recovery, abbreviated as SIR model, for number of people affected with a contagious illness in a closed population over time. So this picture shows how SIR model works. It was proposed to explain the rapid rise and fall in number of affected patients observed in epidemics such as plague. In addition to the oft-mentioned story, here are some other successful stories about using mathematical and statistical model in fighting against infectious diseases. For example, in 2013 Ebola outbreak in Africa, researchers modeled and analyzed virus genetic data, revealing mechanism for spread of the virus across geographic regions. In 2016 outbreak of Zika virus in America, researchers accurately located origin of Zika virus based on geographic information and viral genetic informations, and reveal the law of the virus's geographic distributions. In chronicle spread of AIDS epidemics, researchers used the space network structure of the virus spread model to clarify HIV-1 virus in global space-time transmission relationship. Researchers discovered some new control measure against Ebola virus based on mathematical analysis. They have found that funerals in West Africa are the super transmission event of Ebola. And by focusing on isolating worst Ebola cases, it would be significantly reduce transmission. A lot of studies use real-time airline big data to predict that screening specific traveler would most effectively prevent spread of Ebola virus overseas. Next, I want to talk about use of big data in fighting against infectious diseases. As we know, mathematical and statistical model cannot be a good tool without good big data. In an infectious outbreak, innovative technology such as cloud services, big data, and artificial intelligence are powerful weapons in response to outbreak. So big data is widely used in field of epidemic tracking, path transmission, model prediction, and resource allocations. Also, the viral genetic data has also played an important role in modeling infectious diseases. By analyzing differences in viral genes in different infected individuals, researchers can construct the virus development trees and infer the key information, such as when the infection occurred. This kind of study is called viral dynamics, which is mostly used in RNA viruses such as Ebola, HIV, that mutate more rapidly. Big internet data has also been used in modeling and analyzing common viruses such as flu, and it has characteristic of low time delay, strong real-time, wide range of investigations, and high stabilities. In 2009, the Google first proposed a Google flu system that uses internet search data to predict flu trend. Researchers continuously improved the statistical models and obtained more accurate real-time prediction results. This picture is a Google flu model. But big internet data also has its shortcomings. It alone can go wrong. So here is a picture about the Google's flu prediction system. In a flu outbreak in December 2012, the Google's forecasts were almost twice as exaggerated as they actually were. The root of the problem is that Google engineering do not know the link between search keywords and flu transmission. To avoid shortcoming of big internet data, we also need to use causal inference methods to build more accurate analytic models. So the issue here is that the correlation of the variable does not imply causalities. So one example is about a published paper in Lancet, which is top medical journal, by Andrew Wakefield in 1998. Wakefield concluded that vaccine was associated with the onset of both gastrointestinal diseases and developmental problems. However, 12 years later, the Lancet said Wakefield paper is incorrect. So why is that the case? It turned out, well, it is true that no vaccine is 100% harmless. The researcher has shown that Wakefield causal link is mostly based on anecdotal evidence and influenced by confirmation bias. So therefore, their correlation link is not causal link. Next, I'd like to report some current research results on COVID-19 using mathematical and statistical tool by our teams and also other teams. So first, I want to talk about our work on estimation of the distribution of incubation period. So let me begin by explaining briefly about the concept of incubation here. So incubation period of infectious disease is a time between infection and appearance of the first sign and symptoms, as indicated in this graph. So the time period between the person infected and the time the first symptom has appeared. The precise information about incubation period is very important, can help us to provide optimum length of the quarantine period for disease control purpose, can also help us to investigate the mechanism of transmissions and development of treatment. So in spite of the importance of the incubation period, it often poorly estimated based on limited data. So to best our knowledge, there are only a handful of number of studies involving incubation period COVID-19. So this is a table show us some published articles about incubation period for SARS, MERS, and also COVID-19. So you can see that last column shows the results on COVID-19. So there are only about 3 articles which look at this problem. So here are some limitations of the previous methods and also our new approach idea. So previous approaches has a limitation. Reason is the distribution of incubation period in most of literature is either described through a parametric model or its empirical distribution based on observed incubation period from contact tracking data. The contact tracking data is challenging and expensive to obtain. Its accuracy can be highly influenced by recall bias. So here I'm going to introduce a new estimation method, use disease onset forward time based on larval cross-sectional and forward follow-up time. And use our approach, and we use following data to do the estimations. So our data mostly come from publicly available from provincial and municipal health commission in China and Ministry of Health in other countries. A total of 1,211 confirmed cases outside the Wuhan province and left Wuhan between January 19 and January 23 were followed forwardly, and the largest data set for estimating incubation period for COVID-19 so far. So cohort was chosen so that the assumption that infected cases at Wuhan develop the symptom outside the Wuhan is satisfied, and also the follow-up time is long enough. So based on our new model, here is estimated results. We estimated the median of incubation period is 8.13 days, and the 90th percentile is 14.65 days, and 99th percentile is 21.59 days. So compare with the results in another study, the incubation period estimated in this study is longer. Actually, this estimate are more consistent with the recent data has been reported about someone who became infected again after has been quarantined for more than 14 days. So now we're going to talk about how we can use the data to estimate the total number of cases in Wuhan in early days. So why is it difficulty to estimate the number of affected cases in Wuhan in early day? For following reasons. Because the virus lengthy incubation period, as we showed before, variable symptom presentation, sometimes without fever or other symptoms, and also overburden of medical resources and personnel at the early day in Wuhan. So the reported cases about number of infected cases in Wuhan in early day was underreported. So here is our estimation idea. So even though reported cases in Wuhan in early day are underreported, are not reliable, but many cases reported outside of Wuhan, including international cases, are pretty accurate because the number of cases are small. So therefore, the detection is nearly 100% in international traveler in early outbreak and other cities in China. So we may use imported case incidents from Wuhan combined with daily probability of travel from Wuhan to other city to other country. We may able to estimate the number of total cases in Wuhan. So here is results based on this new methods. So we estimated the number of cases that should be reported in Wuhan by January 2020 is about 4,094. And 58,153 by February 13, 2020. If you look at the reported cases by February 13, so reported cases is about 35,991. So definitely is far below our estimate of 58,153. A lot of additional benefit of our model is that we can also estimate the date of the first infections. We estimate the day of first infection is about November 13, 2019. So next I want to report some research results about a new model we have developed. It's called the stochastic dynamic model. So stochastic dynamic model can be used to estimate the key epidemiology parameters and to predict epidemic development over time. Can also estimate the proportion of unobserved carrier and also epidemics containment measures effectiveness, and also assess effectiveness of control measure. So here is the feature of our new stochastic dynamic models. So in this model, we take into account infectiousness of incubation period. So we allow the people who are in incubation period affect other people. And also we allow some people who has been infected but do not have symptom. And also our model can assess impact of different point in time the prevention and control measures. So this overcomes some of the limitations of traditional dynamic model. So here's some of the results based on our new model. We estimated there are about 30% affected individual do not have symptoms. And also patients with a symptom are about twice more likely to pass a pathogen to other as a affected person without symptom. And use our model, we can also look at predict the epidemic trend over time. So here's the results in Beijing. So here, so the x-axis is time, y-axis is number of the cases. So the data we have is up to February 22nd. There's a solid line. So let's look at the blue line. So blue is number of reported case by authorities. So that's the real data we get from health commissions. And then two blue broken line are the predicted upper bound and the lower bound based on our models. So from this graph, we can see that our prediction is reasonable because the observed number actually is within our 95% confidence bound. So if we believe this model, then we can use a model to predict what will happen after February 22nd when we don't have data. So that's how we use a model. So we use observe data to estimate our parameters. And based on our estimated model, they can give a prediction in the future, which we don't have observed data yet. So this graph use our model to predict total number of cases affected overseas. So particularly we did for US and UK. So the left picture is prediction for US, the right picture is a prediction for UK. So we have so if we look at the left side for the US, so we have a 3 line here. The solid blue line is reported cases, and then the red line is predicted cases, and the upper line, the black broken line, is predicted cases of all infected people, including the people who do not have symptoms. So from this line, we can see that our model actually pretty good. So prediction, so we have a data up to March 15. So you can see observed number of cases very close to predicted cases. And then if we believe our model, which is reasonable based on observed data, then we show the number of cases in US actually grow exponentially. So which is actually consistent with what's happening right now. So here are further 2 results for Spain and Italian. So left side is predicted number for Spain, and the right picture is a predicted number for Italy. So next, I want to talk about the results on risk factor and COVID-19 done by other team of researchers. So this one is particularly interesting. So this one of a research group studied relationship between blood type and COVID-19 susceptibility to say what is does the blood type are related to whether you're going to get COVID-19. So this table shows the results. So we know each person belongs to one of these 4 blood type, A, B, AB, or O. So the first column show either your control group, that means you don't have infection, or you are infected group. So from this data, the researcher draw following results. So this is done by Zhou and others at Southern University of Science and Technology. So they show that the blood type A was associated with higher risk for getting COVID-19 compared with non-A blood type. And then they also show blood type O was associated with lower risk for infection compared with non-type O blood group. So I want to caution a little bit here. So the results is promising, but there still show us correlation between blood type and infection of COVID-19. So I think the more work needs to be done to actually show the causal link between those two groups, two factors. So a lot of interesting research actually is about relationship between the virus, the COVID-19, and ultraviolet light, UV. So the researcher led by Kowalski, who studied the relationship between the UV and COVID-19. So the results show that the ultraviolet light, UV, can actually kill the virus of the COVID-19. Because of this result, actually the National Health Commission in China has issued a guideline say that the guideline says the virus is sensitive to the UV light and the heat. So the UV light radiation can infect the eliminated virus. So this according to China Daily Report. Although UV is effective in killing the virus indoors, the UV lamp should not be used to sterilize hand and another area of skin, as radiation can cause skin irritations. So we have to be very careful with UV lamps. Actually, based on those results, so this results actually has been put into practice. So in this picture, so Shanghai public transport firm called the Yang Gao has converted a regular cleaning room into a UV light diffusion chamber for buses. So they cut in 40 minutes process down to just 5 minutes. So to disinfect the buses, they use UV lights instead of use other kind of detergent. So that's one uses. So here is some of our publications based on our research. So for the people who are interested, can take a look at those publications. So thank you all for listening to my presentation. So hopefully this lecture can help you to understand more about uses of the mathematical and statistical tool against the virus. Thank you very much.